When Jesus saw him and knew that he'd been lying there a long time, he said to him, "Do you want to be whole? Do you want to be healed?" as some translators put it. The sick man answered him, "Sir, I have no one to put me into the pool." 20 years ago, next Sunday, was also the third Sunday after Pascha. How do I know that? Because on the third Sunday after Pascha every year, we have this reading from the Gospel of John about the healing of the paralytic, which contains that wonderful dialogue, part of which I quoted for you just a moment ago. And I recall preaching about it. Preaching, but not from the patristic perspective that I usually do. Not from the perspective of Tertullian or St. John Chrysostom, who see in this passage a baptismal motif. Rather, I spoke from the perspective of what we in Los Angeles had just experienced. It was 1992, and in the wake of the acquittal of those 4 police officers in the beating of Rodney King, we in Los Angeles had just lived through days of what was, at that time, the worst civil disorder in the history of the United States. Some of you who are in Los Angeles will remember that. Rioting, lawlessness, absolute anarchy, chaos, looting and burning of countless businesses, virulent racism, resulting in the injury of some 2,000 people and in the tragic deaths of some 54 people. Much of what I share with you today, I said 20 years ago. A caution. Some people in our parish at that time did not appreciate what I said 20 years ago. Some of you today may not appreciate what I say, but I still feel compelled to say it. We all heard a great deal about the healing of the city of Los Angeles in those initial days after the civil disturbances. I suggested then that perhaps we could apply some of the aspects of this great miracle of healing of the paralytic to our efforts at such healing in Los Angeles. I pointed out that the healing of the paralytic took place at the pool of Bethesda, which has 5 porticos, 5 porches. St. Augustine of Hippo, in his commentary on this passage, says that the 5 porches under which the sick lay signify the Torah, the 5 books of Moses, the law of Moses, if you will. That law did not bring healing to the paralytic. The compassion of Christ did. And in the same way, I suggested, the civil law would not bring healing to the people of South Central. But the compassion of Christ would. The civil law would raise awareness of offenses, and there were offenses for which people should be held responsible. But it would not bring healing. The compassion of Christ would. My statement then and now was not meant to condone the lawlessness of that period. Rather, it was intended to challenge us to be bearers of light of the resurrected Christ to the darkness of South Central. Allegorically, I suggested that the paralyzed man could stand for the people living there. Jesus inquires of him, "Do you want to be made whole?" That same question, I suggested, could be addressed to the people of South Central and to us as well. Do we want to be made whole? Do we want to be healed? It's not such a foolish question as it might initially sound. The man, the paralytic man, and the people of South Central waited a long time. And it may well be that hope had died and left behind a passive despair, which, sadly, in the case of the people of South Central, turned vicious. But the paralytic was not content to remain an invalid. his response was immediate. He wanted to be healed, to be made whole, though he did not see how it would ever come about, since he had no one to help him. Note that the first essential toward receiving the power of Christ to transform one's life is to have an intense desire for it. In effect, Christ is inquiring of him, do you really want to be changed? If in our innermost hearts we are content to stay the way we are, there can be no healing, no change for us, no being made whole. So also, I suggested, with the people of South Central. They want to be whole. They want to change, though they do not know how, since they had no one to help them. Note also that Christ tells this man to rise, take up your pallet, and walk. The power of God does not dispense with human effort. In effect, Christ was commanding that man to attempt the impossible. Not only was this man, who for 38 years lay motionless on his pallet, on his bed, he was to pick up that bed and walk with it. Now that man might well have said, with an injured resentment, that for 38 years his bed had been carrying him, and there's not much sense in telling him now to carry it. But this man attempted the impossible. He made the effort, along with Christ, and a miracle is manifested. So also, I suggested then, must the people of South Central attempt the seemingly impossible, make the effort to be made whole, to be changed, and so also must you and I. For you and I suggested, must be among those who place the paralytics of South Central into the healing pool. But before we do so, perhaps we would do well to place ourselves in that pool and to place one another in that pool. Christ's inquiry, do you want to be made whole, is addressed to each one of us. Those of our community 20 years ago and today who are indifferent or intolerant or prejudiced or judgmental, maybe they really do want to be healed, but they do not have anyone to help them in the healing process. I suggested then, and I suggest again today, let us be that someone to one another. I concluded my remarks 20 years ago with these words. On Pascha night, you and I sang these verses. Let us be illumined by the feast. Let us embrace each other. Let us call brothers and sisters, even those who hate us, and forgive all by the resurrection. Did we really mean what we sang? The healing waters have now been stirred. Now is the time to act. Let us embrace not only those members of our own congregation, but the people of South Central as well. Those that hate us. Let us call them brothers and sisters, and truly mean it. And let us not only forgive all by the resurrection, but be a part of the resurrecting of others to the new life in Jesus Christ. Last Friday, I, quite by accident, discovered a wonderful group of people who have done and are continuing to do precisely this. They belong to an organization called LAMP, L-A-M-P, Los Angeles Ministry Project. This project was founded in the wake of the civil unrest of 1992, when 8 congregations of Catholic sisters, the Religious of the Sacred Heart of Jesus, Sacred Heart of Mary, the Society of the Holy Child Jesus, the Sisters of St. Joseph of Carondelet, the Sisters of the Holy Family, the Sisters of Notre Dame, the Sisters of St. Louis, the Sisters of the Holy Names of Jesus and Mary, and the Daughters of Charity, when these nuns came together to survey the Vernon and Central neighborhood and to perform a thorough needs assessment in that South Central community. These nuns literally walked those streets, going house to house in that very tense period following the civil disorders. And they assessed the situation of the people living there. And what they discovered was a strong desire from local mothers to improve their own literacy and their education, to enhance their parenting skills, and to prepare their children for school and for success in life. In dialogue with the community, the assessment of these nuns led to the formation of LAMP. These nuns developed family-centered programming that has, over the subsequent years, now grown to include early childhood education, parenting classes, family literacy, and English as a second language, as well as family advocacy and access to the variety of other community resources now available, combating existing inequality and reducing poverty in that area one house, one family at a time. Using what? Using the power of education to transform that community, to strengthen families, prepare children to reach their potential for advancement both in school and in life. LAMP continues to offer a shared learning environment where children and their parents, they learn together, strengthening the family bond, preparing parents to be their child's first and most important educator, building self-esteem, and strengthening mutual interdependent relations. Today, 20 years later, LAMP is a community-based nonprofit organization, and although LAMP's programs do not include any specific religious teaching, its founding congregation of nuns continue to be closely connected and supportive of it by volunteering, by making available financial grants, and by membership on its board. On Pascha night, you and I also sang this hymn. The souls bound in the chains of hell, O Christ, seeing thy compassion without measure, press onward to the light with joyful steps, praising the eternal Pascha. The people of the Vernon Central area of South Central Los Angeles have seen the compassion of Christ in these nuns. And seeing it, they now press on to the light with joyful steps. I wish to have been there on Friday to see the little kids of that neighborhood and how joyful, how hopeful, how enthusiastic they are about life and about their prospects. At the conclusion of the gathering we had that day, each kid came and gave each one of us a flower as a symbol of hope, of new life. We would say that of resurrection. And the little girl gave me mine, just stared in my eyes, as if to say thank you. I hadn't done anything, but just being there and witnessing to what they're trying to do in conjunction with these nuns is transformative. You and I are thus challenged by the resurrection to be similar lights in our darkened world.